Hope you're doing well. Legit, I don't know if like part of this video or all of this video is going to end up on my YouTube channel. Like normally when I do these behind the scenes uncut like video recordings of the Princess Davy podcast recordings, I intend for them to be a Patreon exclusive. But since this is like the surprise season finale of season 1, I thought like yeah, maybe it would be fun to share this video with more people, maybe get them more engaged not only with like the podcast but with the Patreon, get them kind of enticed, maybe they'll want to come back for more. I don't know. Like that's the point of the Patreon is that you enjoy this kind of content or these kinds of videos, and that's why you're here. I don't know. It's a test. This is an experiment, much like my life. So yeah, today's episode is going to be about the Mighty Ducks. I'm kind of excited. I'm kind of nervous. I have said in the intro, or I'm going to say, I don't like. I've recorded the intro. But I'm going to say, I don't know if I'm just going to re-record the intro, though, is what I'm thinking. I've already said that this is going to be spoiler-free, but we know me. I can say spoiler-free all I want, but then I'm going to say something that's going to spoil it for someone, because who knows? So just in case, spoiler-free, but also spoiler warning. Because, like, I don't want to get ahead of myself. We'll see, I'm already getting, like, ready to talk. Okay, so... You ready? Ready? Let's hit record. Thank you, Anchor, for making this super easy. Again, if you are like interested in starting a podcast, you should look into Anchor. They're really great. Okay, so anyways. I can't hit this button. Okay, this episode is already starting kind of a little messy, but that's the vibe we get here at the Princess Davy podcast. Legit, I don't know if you are watching this video over on the Patreon or over on my YouTube channel, or if you're just listening to this episode, because this is the surprise season finale. Yes, we are here to talk about the Mighty Ducks trilogy, and I thought it would be fun to like talk about the Mighty Ducks trilogy and try to keep it spoiler free. I don't know, like I know these movies obviously came out in the 90s, so like I don't want to say most people have probably seen them, but people have seen these movies. They've been out in the ether for a while now. But when I like was watching, or before I went to go watch these movies, because Disney Plus is releasing a new like series, a kind of remake of the Mighty Ducks, though it's kind of like a continuation because it features Gordon Bombay. So anyways, I'm getting too into the series. So before I decided to watch the series, I was like, hey, why don't I go back and watch the original trilogy? Because I loved those movies as a kid, and like, you know, I remember watching them a lot as a kid. I remember playing roller hockey or street hockey or whatever you want to call it, like hockey on my rollerblades. And I remember playing that as a kid specifically because I saw it in the Mighty Ducks, and it was just fun, you know, one of those childhood memories that I just think about, not from like all the time, but from time to time, you know, on a rainy day it comes in and I'm like, rollerblading, and how many balls we lost to the sewer that we decided to just leave open because instead of like covering it, we're like, it's just a hazard to whoever wants to be on that side first, you know. Anyways, so with the Mighty Ducks though, I have these like normal with my movies, and if you've been a fan of the podcast, you know my memory is kind of foggy. But literally with these movies, I remember different movies, because like I should start off with saying that I'm gonna order these movies from like least favorite to most favorite. But again, when I was recalling these movies, okay, and even when I've talked to about these movies with friends, I've said things about these movies, and no one's like corrected me about specific things. You know, I'll get into more detail later with each movie, but like I sincerely did not really remember these movies. I know that it was about hockey, and I know that it was about like a fictional team that became like a real team eventually through Disney. I don't know if it's Disney owned the team. I think they did own the team. I don't know if they still do own the team or if it's still a team that's in existence. Anyways, so like facts that I didn't look up, and I'm realizing that I probably should, or at least written them down, because they were there on the page and I didn't write them down. So with the Mighty Ducks trilogy, going back and watching it, I was like, okay, these movies are definitely not what I remember. They're still enjoyable, but I'm just gonna say they're a product of the '90s. That is to say, they are kind of silly and goofy, and if you watch them in order, like I did, they progressively get more goofy and outrageous and cartoony. And I'll start with the most cartoony of them all, and the one that I like the least, which is Mighty Ducks 3 or D3. Came out in 1993. It follows the Mighty Ducks at this point after they've had a few successes, and now they are at a high school called Eden Hall Academy. And here's the truth, okay? Like I said when I was recalling these movies, I sincerely, for the longest time, seriously would refer to this one as the college one. And no one corrected me. I was like, oh yeah, the third one where they're in college, and everyone's like, yeah, they're not in college. They're fully in high school. And watching it, going back, like, yeah, it's kind of obvious that these child actors are like younger, but the reason why I guess my brain just put them in college is because a lot of the things they do are more akin to like the college comedy pranks. They're pulling pranks on one another. The varsity versus JV just kind of reminded me more of a college campus. Maybe it's I just didn't live in a rich neighborhood or in that kind of grouping where like high schools were that fancy and hoity-toity, and like, holy crap, is that just a normal thing for other people's high schools to be that fancy and nice and crazy? But either way, like, I know it's a private academy, but still, like, whoa. And going back and watching it, like, even when I was watching it, okay, they're talking and playing, and at one point the kid's like, yeah, I'm 13. I was like, holy crap, they're that young? Oh, yeah, they're in high school. They're fully in high school. Like, what? But they're freshmen in high school. Like, it's just, to me, it was just kind of like, okay. Because, I guess I get into more reason. Because I just thought, I guess I could say it now. I thought in the second one they were in the Olympics, and they fully weren't in the Olympics. So like, yeah, with the third one they're in high school, and it's kind of just more about these like two different groupings again, the JV team versus the varsity. And at this point the characters are straight up cartoon characters of them former selves, so they're like really hot-headed if they used to be hot-headed. They're really punk rock if they were punk rock. They really like to eat and be like slow and sluggish if they were slow and sluggish. Like, it's just, again, they're cartoons at this point. They don't seem as realistic as they do with the first one, because the first one is like, that's my kind of second favorite. It's the one that, it's the first. The first is like, I don't want to say the first is the worst, but people say the first is the best. For me, it's the middle. It's the second, it's the middle ground. It came out in 1992, and it's literally more about like the Coach Bombay, kind of being forced to take care of and coach these kids, the Mighty Ducks team, and you kind of see this dynamic between the coach, a reluctant coach, and these like knuckleheaded kids. This one's great. It's definitely a classic 90s movie. Has a nice kind of focus between the kids and the adults, so you kind of get like two different stories going on, and it's really good balance between the two, unlike the third where it's straight up just about the kids and you don't really get like a coach dynamic. You're kind of getting, they have a new coach in the third one. Coach Bombay isn't the coach in the third one. Am I spoiling it? See, I'm trying not to spoil this, dude. That's why it's making it hard. I'm also trying not to giggle as much. So, like, with the Mighty Ducks number one, okay, the first one, it's just, again, it's classic. It's great. It's just, my favorite moment is the poop prank that they pull in the beginning. So that's hardcore, not a spoiler, but they do pull a poop prank, and I remembered that for the longest time. But that was the one thing that I remembered as a kid that I did get right, because I remember I would always tell folks like, hey, remember when they put the poop in the purse? And like, I don't know why that was the one thing my brain stuck to, but that was the one thing I got right in all of these movies. Because going to Mighty Ducks 2, like I said, I thought for the longest time they were in the Olympics. Okay, they fully were not in the Olympics. This one, it came out in 1994. It's my personal favorite, and it still is after watching the three of them, because you get that kind of dynamic where the characters start becoming more cartoon versions of themselves. It gets a little bit more silly and more slapstick, and the characters are kind of more not kid friendly, but the whole movie's a little bit more kid friendly, a little bit more vibrant. The colors are more vibrant. Like at least to me, maybe I was just picking that up, or it could be the TV screen I was watching it on. But it seemed a little bit more fun, a little bit more lively, a little bit more. It wasn't too goofy and ridiculous and over the top, and the characters were still believable. But it's still there was a fun goofy moments with all the characters and all the beats and stuff like that happen on, because obviously it's a kids movie. It's like is it, I don't know if you would label it a comedy. I didn't look that up. It was just like a sports movie. I think it was like labeled a family genre movie. But it's a comedy. These are obviously comedies because there's humor bits. The kids are hilarious. Like the one who always says, Aberman, hey, better, swing, better, hey, better. And it's like clearly they're not playing baseball. That's a mistake I would make. Anyways, so with the Mighty Ducks 2, it's them fully not being in the Olympics, okay? It's them participating in the Junior Goodwill Games, which was actually created as a part of like boycotting the Olympics or something like that. I didn't really look into the history of that because my mind was still blown on the fact that these kids were like not fully in the Olympics. And it makes more sense as an adult because it's like, yeah, fully they don't have kids in the Olympics. But as a kid, I just thought they were in the Olympics. And even as an adult, like fully before I went in to watch these movies, I was like, my favorite one is the one where they go to the Olympics and they have like, they face all the different teams from all the different countries. But here's the one thing with all of the movies, okay, all of them, obviously again, they're a product of the 90s, so they have their own problems with that. But the one thing that I just find weird watching now is like they're fully kids, right? They're young, they're on their hockey team and they're sprightly, they're rascals. But then whenever they go to play other teams, the other teams are like full on adults. Like grown ass adults. Like I'm watching it, I'm like, there's no way I'm supposed to believe that those are kids. Like in some scenes in the close-ups, like yeah, obviously they picked kids for those actors. But then they just fully like stopped caring, like especially in the third movie, they're just like, yeah, we're just gonna have them face grown ass adults. And it's especially really noticeable when they do the close up shots and they're getting in, their faces, especially in the second one, my favorite one, like right before the cowboy character like comes out with his lasso. Again, they're starting to become cartoony. Before he comes out and he starts lassoing a hockey player, he gets in this girl's face and is straight up like, roar. I'm like, that's a straight up adult. That is a grown ass man that he looks older than me. I don't know if they identify as a man, so I apologize. But like that is a grown ass adult. That is a grown ass person. That is not a child. Okay, like no. So watching it back, that's just the one thing that's very obvious to me that they didn't think that people would notice. Or maybe they did and they just didn't care because they're like, we're making a kids movie. Kids don't care. And obviously I didn't as a kid, but growing up and having grown up and watching it back, it's just like, what the fuck? Like what? Who approved this? Disney, you have money. You had money in the 90s and you still do. So you could afford it to like, well, I don't know how that works. Child labor laws. And also like, I don't know. Maybe like, I don't know. We're getting into my financials, but like seriously, the Mighty Ducks trilogy, it's a pretty fun trilogy to go back and visit, especially if you have not really watched it ever, or if you haven't watched it in a long time, go and check it out. I think it's available not only on Disney Plus, but on Hulu too. They're kind of pushing it because, again, Disney Plus has released or is releasing a new reboot of the Mighty Ducks, so I'm definitely going to be watching that. I don't know if I'm going to do a review on it for my podcast or if I'm going to do a review over it on my YouTube channel, but much like the video for this episode, it will be available somewhere for folks to watch at some point in time. Yeah, that's all I have to say for this episode. I wanted to keep it short and sweet because, like I said, this is the season finale. I'm kind of excited because when I come back, I'm going to have some new like equipment, a new setup. I wanted to finish this season sort of just like the way I've kind of been doing it, so that when I start with another season, I start fresh. So hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully you come back. Hopefully you stick with me. And at least, and let me know if you like the Mighty Ducks. Which one's your favorite? Okay, I'm listening. I post my like voice message for my podcast over on my Twitter account. You can find that at Davy Be Somebody. And also just check out my links. That's all the advertising I'll do for myself. fully couldn't hit stop on the recorder. But yeah, that's like I said, that's it for this episode. Hopefully you enjoy it. Again, I don't know where I'm going to be posting this particular episode in the point in time. And again, like I'm trying to keep the giggles in because I'm a giggly, goofy person, and hopefully that's why you enjoy these videos. Oh, legit. Love you, stay strong, and make magic.